Hello everyone and welcome to the 2019 FIDE World Cup. It's the second game of the finals, Liren versus Teimour Radjabov. Now Ding has the white pieces, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous videos, thought everyone was familiar with this, but the finals is a 4 games classical. So it's not 2 classical games and then you go into the rapids, it's 4 classical games and only then you go into the rapids. And here something very extraordinary happened already before the first move was played. Now, I'm sure Radjabov prepared for many things, but what we will see now, I don't know if Radjabov was ready for this, so I hope you guys are ready for it. Here it is. Before the first move, Ding goes for the eye contact handshake. There you have it. Ding goes straight for the eye contact, and Radjabov does not return the favor. He just, shakes the hand, stares at his pieces, and I don't know. It seems like a pretty big deal, such a strong start to the game. But yeah, we'll see what happens, and it's not like all that much depends on the finals of the 2019 FIDE World Cup. The semifinals were much more important. If you win the semifinals, you go into the candidates tournament. Here, it's not all that important because you're already in the candidates. Both Ding and Radjabov are in the candidates, and first place is $110,000. Second place is a guaranteed $80,000. So it's a $30,000 difference. But when you're in the candidates and have a guaranteed $80,000, everything is easier. But okay, still you do want to win the World Cup. With the white pieces, Ding opens with c4. With knight to f6, the English opening is on the board. With knight to c3, e6, and now e4. The Mikenas variation. With c5 by Radjabov, and now e5. Pushing the knight, you could either go to, well, not there, but g4 or g8, and there is one game where g4 was played and black actually won the game, but everyone always goes knight to g8. So this is what Radjabov does. We have knight to f3 and now knight to c6, and the d4 just expanding in the center. With c captures on d4, knight captures, and knight captures on e5 now. Giving up a pawn, but for some very nice ideas. Knight d to b5 by Ding, going after knight to d6 check. Radjabov invites this check. He's very well prepared for this line. With a6 attacks the knight, knight to d6 check, bishop captures, and queen captures on d6. So you cannot offer a trade right away because your knight on e5 is hanging. So first f6. This is one of the positions where it's actually okay to play f6. And the Ding continues, bishop to e3. The idea is bishop to b6. You kind of want to harass the black queen, and here Radjabov plays a knight to e7. So it seems like you could trap the black queen with bishop to b6, but not really, as Radjabov, as we mentioned, is very familiar with this line. With bishop to b6 by Ding, and now knight to f5, offering a trade. Bishop captures, knight captures on d6. Ding, of course, isn't interested, and there are 2 very famous games that have reached this position, both where Garry Kasparov had the white pieces. One against Alexander Belyavsky in the 1991 Linares tournament. Kasparov won that game. He played queen to c5 here, and also a game against Sokolov in 1988 World Cup where he again played queen to c5 and won that game as well. But Ding goes queen to b4 instead. It's not a new move or anything, it's just a different line than Kasparov chose. With knight to c6, Radjabov goes after the queen once again before offering a queen trade with queen to c5 and now queen to e7. And here Ding started spending some time. He's trying to decide whether he wants to capture the queen or maybe play something else. Maybe bishop to d3 first, maybe castle queenside first. And after a while he decides to castle queenside, and he gives the black an option. Here Radjabov Radjabov said in an interview after the game that this is where he forgot his further analysis. He didn't know what was the better move here, but there is no best move here. I mean, there is, but for human chess, a lot of moves seem like a good idea. The best idea is just to trade queens right away, but to do that you also have to give back the extra pawn. For example, queen captures, bishop captures, and now you will have problems developing your queen side. How do you develop? The d5 square is nicely covered by white. You would have to play d6, give back the pawn, and then after knight captures, rook captures, you would continue development, bishop to d7, but then you have to give back the pawn. But here Radjabov says, no, I accept the challenge. I play d6, and the queen has only one square since the black knights cover d4 and d3. You have to go all the way to a3. And by doing this, Radjabov keeps the extra pawn. So he castles, and the Ding just, well, we have castles of opposite sides, so best what you can do in situations like this is to attack. So Ding starts with g4. We have knight to h6, now putting pressure on the g4 pawn, and now rook to g1. Now Ding is ready to push f4, h4, and continue the attack. And here there is one game that reached this position. It's from 2009, Jonathan Grant versus David Eggleston, where f5 was played. Black was even able to win this game, but here Radjabov chooses knight to f7. It's the strongest move in the position, recommended by the engine, keeping an eye on the g5 square with the knight, queen, and pawn. And now he says, okay, now let's see what Ding can do. Ding continues his expansion on the king side. He plays f4. Radjabov continues development with bishop to d7 and now h4. And here we have a5. So bishop to d7 followed by a5, and now after Ding plays g5, he continues attacking. Now we have king to h8, ready to recapture with the g pawn if g captures on f6. And now really just bishop d7 followed by a5 and king h8 really seem like Radjabov already had this position in his home preparation. It just feels like it's a little bit blurry to him, as he's really not spending time with any of these moves, and it's a really tricky position. Ding attacking, you just, casually, cold-bloodedly play bishop d7, a5 when Ding is coming for you on the king side. Seems very prepared. But okay, with queen to b3 by Ding, now the queen is also able to re-enter the game, and we have rook f to c8. Now comes king to b1 by Ding, getting the king away from the c file. And now here Radjabov spent a lot of time, not sure how much exactly, but I'm pretty sure it's over 10 minutes. And he played e5. It's a very odd move to play, because with e5 you lose control of the d5 square. You immediately allow knight to d5. But e5 is not a bad move in itself, only it would be a much better move if you first capture on g5. For example, f captures, h captures, and now e5. And now you have pretty much the same position, only you don't allow white to go knight d5 and capture on f6 right away, as now there is no f6 pawn. And here by playing e5, okay, you do have bishop to f5 check coming in. The king, for example, if he goes to a1, then knight b4 becomes very strong. You will not be able to kick the knight away with a3 because, well, you don't want to allow the a file to open up. So a lot of tactical ideas for Radjabov in this situation. But instead he played e5 right away, and Ding didn't take much to go for knight to d5. You do want your monster knight there as soon as possible. So first bishop to f5 check as planned. Now you could either move the king or block. Blocking allows queen to e6, so nothing really happens there. If you capture, the queen recaptures with check. So instead Ding just goes king to a1. He says my king is perfectly safe there, and now comes queen to e6 by Radjabov as his queen is under attack on e7. We have queen to e6, and now the idea we mentioned, g captures on f6. This is now possible as Radjabov did not capture on g5 before playing e5. But okay, g captures on f6, and now Ding could go for bishop to g2 right away, move the knight to e3, and then bishop to d5. This bishop will be a monster bishop on this diagonal. But he first plays a3, seemingly not allowing this knight to come to b4, but it's actually not an issue. Knight to b4 is the best move for black in this position. For example, if you capture, of course, you're getting destroyed. The bishop covers b1. You've just allowed this rook to check you. And if you don't capture it, then, of course, the game just continues. You could go knight to e3, prepare the ideas that we just mentioned. E captures on f4, knight captures on f5, queen captures, and now queen to f3, going after the b7 pawn, where you would be very safe. But it's important to note that you don't have a perpetual here with knight to c2 check. Of course, you don't want to go to b1 to allow losing of the queen. You can go to king a2, and now knight b4 does not ensure you a perpetual, because you can just capture it and go king b3. The king is very safe there, and well, you're just down a piece. But all in all, knight to b4 after a3 would be great for Radjabov. But instead he went rook a to b8 first, and now we have bishop to g2. Now Ding is ready to play knight back to e3 and bring this bishop over to d5, where it will just be a monster bishop. with rook to g8, and now comes the knight to e3 as planned. So here it's not easy to decide what to do. This knight is nicely pressuring this bishop, and it's not easy to make a move for black. For example, one such idea could be bishop to g6, but do you see how white wins if Radjabov goes bishop to g6? I'll give you a couple of seconds for this one. It's a really nice idea. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on just winning a piece and the game. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, just f5. You invite the bishop back, as black will lose a piece here if you don't capture it. So you have to capture it, and only now bishop to d5. And the knight on f7 and the queen and the bishop on f5 are both guarded by the queen, so the queen will be overloaded. Queen to d7, you just pick it up. Knight captures on f5. Queen captures, and now you eliminate the knight on f7, and you won a piece. For example, captures. Black has no counterplay. You're up a piece. Everything is excellent. One thing Radjabov could have done here in this situation is rook captures on g2. If he wanted, he could have decided to give up the exchange and allow knight captures on g2. Now maybe bishop to e4, and then, for example, f captures on e5, knight captures on e5, and now knight to e3. We would have this position where Ding is of course better, but it's a very tricky position. However, he decided for knight to d4, and this just allows Ding to really create a powerful position for him. He played bishop captures on d4 first, eliminating the knight, with e captures on d4, and now knight captures on f5, with queen captures on f5, and now Ding is creating the monster bishop to d5. And it's not only that this is a beautiful diagonal for the bishop. Your knight is under attack. You will always have an eye on the g8 square, so the other rook will never be able to go to the g8 square, and there's no way for black to ever attack the white king. The white king is extremely safe here. This is unbreakable. The bishop guarding the c4 pawn, this is just beautiful. If Radjabov could somehow trade this knight for the bishop, then maybe. But okay, Radjabov goes rook captures on g1. We have rook captures on g1, and now, as your knight is under attack, you just bring it back into the game with knight to h6. And here, well, of course, most people would just go queen to g3 here, threatening some queen to g7 action, but black can actually defend this with queen to g6. So Ding plays the much stronger queen to b6. And now you're threatening queen to c7. If you allow this, it's game over. It comes with the threat of capturing the rook, and also the threat of queen g7 checkmate. So Radjabov has to go back with queen to d7, but now you can't keep an eye on everything. Queen captures on d4, and now the material and the board is equal. Ding grabs his pawn back, but he is left with a much better position. If you look at this bishop, just slicing, the board in four pieces. Just beautiful. Controlling everything, keeping an eye on the g8 square, which is extremely important. You constantly have to keep an eye on this. Rook has to keep an eye on the square. The knight has to keep an eye on the square. You have to be careful. If you remove them, then rook g8 will just be mate. You have to keep an eye on your f6 pawn. Queen captures on f6 also will be deadly. So queen to e7, you have to defend it. And now just king to a2. Ding's position is so good that he takes this opportunity to improve the safety of his king. And Radjabov has to play a move. So what can he do? He plays knight to f5. He attacks Ding's queen. And now what do you do here? Queen d3 seems like a nice idea, attacks the knight on f5, but you get queen to e3. And now you cannot capture due to queen captures on g1. You would have to go back, then go to g2, and then, well, threaten some ideas, but there's no point in allowing it. So instead, Ding goes queen back to c3. The a5 pawn is under attack, and now Radjabov finally defends it. b6. Now there is no threat of bishop captures on b7 in the future, so you can finally bring your rook into the game. And here the situation on the clock is Ding 8 minutes, Radjabov 3 minutes, and they still have to make 3 moves until they reach time control. So it's a very intense position. Here Ding has to decide what to do. He decides for h5, which creates some beautiful tactical opportunities. He could go for rook e1, attacking the queen, and after the queen moves to g7, he could go for rook to e6, infiltrating and going for this f6 pawn. forcing black to defend with rook to f8, and here all of black's pieces are just tied down. It's just a disgusting position for black. But Ding decides, okay, those are forcing lines, and Radjabov is 3 minutes on the clock. Let's just play h5 and allow him to play whatever he wants and spend more time. Well, I have a very nice tactical idea. With rook to e8 by Radjabov, as Ding did not go for rook to e1, now Radjabov claims the e file. And now again Ding just goes h6, and here this is move 39. Radjabov still has to make 2 more moves to reach time control, but it's a really hard position to play. For example, if you capture this, do you see what the Ding's idea was? Feel free to pause the video, as it's a beautiful idea to find. Well, I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding such a beautiful mating idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's actually rook to e1. You just give it up. For example, queen captures, and queen captures on f6 is mate, because the bishop covers the g8 square. On the other hand, if you don't capture it, there really isn't a good response. Queen to f8, you just play rook captures on e8, queen captures, and now queen captures on f6 is again mate. There's no way to defend this. So after h6, Radjabov, with very little time on the clock, played knight to e3 instead, but it makes no difference. Ding just played rook to e1, and here, before reaching time control, Teimour Radjabov resigned the game before making move 40, as there is nothing more to do here. Whatever you play here, Ding's next move is a rook captures knight, and there is no way to avoid this. For example, if you play anything, rook captures, and again, you will not be able to recapture, or just queen captures. Here, there's no move here Radjabov can make. So really an incredible game by both of them, and you know, Ding just improved the position little by little, and it really seems like in that position where Radjabov had to decide whether to allow the queens on the board by pushing the queen back with queen to d6. I'll just show it in case anyone forgot. So here, basically the opening after knight d6, yeah, bishop e3, there we have it, after Ding castled queenside. d6 or queen captures on c5. It seems that already here things started to go bad for Radjabov. So it was better just to trade queens and give up the d6 pawn, equalize material, than to allow such a powerful position to appear on the board. But yeah, Ding definitely took his chances, and he converted it into a full point, which means he is one step closer to winning the World Cup. Two more classical games between the two of them will be played, so we'll be waiting to check him out. So yeah, once again we could show this very nice intimidating handshake by Ding. Really, I mean, I just love it. So I do hope you enjoyed it as well. And I do hope you enjoyed the game. I would like to thank Stanley Mandel, Rasmus Olsson, and Vishita Technology Services LLC for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the World Cup, and of course checking up on your suggestions. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.